In his bestseller, Intruders, Bud Hopkins chronicled the lives of one Indiana family who were being victimized by what they believed were extraterrestrial invaders. The book used pseudonyms, and when a movie was made about the beleaguered family, actors portrayed them. But now, after more than a decade, the real families agreed to come forward. Here are their first-person accounts of life with the Intruders. On a warm Indian summer evening, on the porch of their Indianapolis home, the Whites share a family meal. A passerby might mistake them for a typical Midwestern family, unless, of course, they'd read this book, detailing the Whites' personal history of alien abduction.
There was more evidence supporting this abduction than any in so far investigated history of the science of the comparative study of abduction, the abduction phenomenon. This is the first case that let us understand the aliens' purpose.
The family's incredible story first came to Bud Hopkins' attention in 1983. The Whites' middle daughter, Debbie, wrote Hopkins a letter explaining her fear and frustration, and included these photographs of strange burn marks which were appearing in the Whites' backyard.
The grass looked like it had been compacted. There was no grass alive on it. That in itself really ticked me off because I thought my yard was nice. It was one day nice, next day no. Yeah, there it is, and it stayed like it for almost 5 years.
This is what happened to that nice, rich, loamy, black-brown soil that the backyard in Indiana had. It was turned sort of gray and hard as a rock. So we don't know what it is that caused this effect, but it has turned up in numerous other UFO landing cases in other parts of the world. When I got out there, and what I learned through a few phone calls, the neighbors had witnessed certain manifestations that very night. There was this tremendous noise coming from Debbie's yard, and this huge flash of light coming through the trees, and all the electricity went out. So we had a lot of people who could say, no, this is not something that went on in some young woman's head. This is something that went on outside the house, in the backyard.
During that UFO encounter, Debbie had a period of missing time she could not account for. But under hypnosis, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place.
We proceeded to do a hypnotic regression, and the story began to slowly unfold of what had happened in the period of time she couldn't recall.
Things started coming out of me. Memories started coming back from all over the place. It was like it's a floodgate opened up.
During that session, Debbie recalled the terrifying events that preceded the mysterious burn marks on the lawn.
Night that changed my life forever. I happened to see a really strange light coming out of the pump house that's next to the swimming pool out back. I was thinking of prowlers, you know. And by the time I got back there in just maybe 5 minutes, it was gone.
When the lights disappeared, Debbie asked her mother to babysit while Debbie went over to a girlfriend's house. Later that night, from the doorway, Debbie's mother began to see the lights as well.
As I looked out the window on the bird feeder, I seen a light that was about the size of a basketball. And I got on the phone and I called Debbie because I was here with the two little ones by myself.
So I hung up the phone. I said, I gotta go home. There's something going on.
She come in the back door and she said, where's Dad's shotgun? And Debbie picked up the gun, went out in the back, and I watched her out the back door, and she came to the pump house and she opened the door.
I don't remember seeing a darn thing. Found my dog hiding under my dad's truck out back and tried with all my might to get her out from under the truck, and she would not come. She was screaming and squealing, and I grabbed her paws and tried to drag her, and she wouldn't come.
When Debbie walked back toward the house, she saw a ball of light inside the garage. Her mother was standing, frozen, at the screen door.
Sometimes when a person is being abducted, the other people are switched off, as we call it. They're sort of in a state of suspended animation.
All of a sudden, I feel like my whole body is on fire. Every inch of my skin is burning. And I realized I couldn't move. And I also could hardly see. It was like I'd been attacked by a mob of tourists with cameras flashing me in the eyes. Then I could see this movement in the yard in front of me, and there were 6 small people. I could see these big black eyes. Ooh, and I got the shivers, you know? And I'm thinking, no, this can't be. Then I can move again. It's like I blinked and all this stuff was gone. Later, we figured out I was gone in like an hour and a half, and I don't remember like 10 minutes.
For months after the incident, Debbie suffered from fatigue, headache, and flu-like symptoms. The family dog died soon after the encounter from what the vet described as an illness resembling radiation poisoning. When Bud Hopkins met the family later, he administered psychological and physical tests and determined that the Whites were of sound mind and body. He then began his 3-year study of their abduction experiences. Bud Hopkins' 3-year investigation concluded that the White family of Indianapolis had had a 30-year relationship with extraterrestrial forces, Hopkins dubbed the Intruders. And when daughter Debbie was hypnotized and regressed back to earlier alien encounters, she revealed the sinister purpose behind the family's chain of abduction experience. What you are about to hear are the actual tapes from her hypnotherapy sessions.
Something's not right.
Okay, Debbie. What's happening?
Like I was being squashed.
Squashed? Whole body?
My stomach.
I felt as if somebody had taken my insides and just ripped me open inside, and I could feel something pulling out of me, and this little tiny thing that looked like a mouse with no skin on it, like a baby mouse, squirming around in their hand.
No! I was not right!
That is a woman crying out in pain, emotional pain, that her child is being taken from her. When this came up with Debbie, and she finally said to me that she had been pregnant and that the baby had disappeared, I realized that this was pretty important in this case. This is the first case that let us understand the sexual reproductive purpose, and now we see it as central, as absolutely the focus of the whole thing.
It was the first case, but not the last. Hopkins received correspondence from hundreds of other abductees who all told the same story. And Hopkins came to believe that the reason for the abductions was to create hybrids, half human, half alien beings.
I remember being in this place. There were several of these gray things in this room, and holding their hands was a very small little person who didn't look like them. She had tufts of white cottony hair sticking out of her head all over, really large eyes, but human, blue. When I thought, oh, I'd love to hug you, and she got this panic look on her face, her eyes got huge, and she darted behind one of them like she was scared to death of me, and I felt real sad. I asked if I could take her home with me, and he told me no, she couldn't survive with me. I assumed they were telling me that I was this child's mother.
In 1993, Debbie had a hysterectomy, and immediately after the operation, her abduction experiences ended abruptly. But her 2 children, now grown, continue to have experiences of their own, and Debbie's new husband, Dave, recently discovered a new scoop mark on his shin.
That was another very important discovery that I made in that case, which of course accompanies this idea of some kind of genetic experimentation, because you're going to be doing that sort of thing across generations. The theories about why a hybrid race is being created are all over the map, but they tend to run to the idea that the aliens have reached some kind of evolutionary dead end and need to revivify their own species.